about to chop it up. Come to the show. We got some things we can talk about. Chop it up. Chop it, chop it, chop it, chop it up. Chop. We got some things we can talk about. Chop it up. Chop it, chop it, chop it, chop it up. Chop it up. Chop it. We got some things we can talk about. Come to the show. We about to chop it up. Come to the show. We got some things we can talk about. Come to the show. We about to chop it up. Come to the show. We got some things we can talk about. Chop it up. Chop it, chop it, chop it, chop it up. Chop. We got some things we can talk about. Chop it up. Chop it, chop it, chop it up. Chop it up. Chop it. We got some things we can talk about.
What's up, Balti-More? Welcome to my Chop Shop family. I'm excited as always that God gives us the privilege to be able to come to you live via Facebook and YouTube. That's right. We're live on YouTube right now. We're trying some new things. And, again, it's always a privilege and a blessing that God gives us this opportunity to be able to come. Now, we're on at a different time tonight because we have a guest that we did not want to reschedule. So I need you guys to like, love, and to share, even tag folks in the comments that need to be on here to hear from our very own warrior champion, the Senator Jill Carter. She championed the legislation that we finally got pushed, which included the repeal of the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights, and she signed on to be a part of that monster squad, as I call them, that awesome team that is working in that Ocean City, terrible, how Governor Hogan described it, not terrific, when he saw the video of those young black men being manhandled by police. But we want to get this thing started. So let me bring on my right hand and my left hand, my main man on the ones and twos, the wheels of steel. Technique 1200s only, nothing else will do. The one and only Mr. Shaka Pitch Shot.
What's good, Marv? What's good, man?
They beefing, and I told everybody, don't ask me nothing about unemployment, because you're not going to like my answer.
Because there's jobs out there, Marv.
I work in workforce development. I got more jobs than I got people to put in. So don't ask me, because I know what narrative the color of my skin says I'm supposed to follow. But that's one of those that, man, listen, I believe, now I'm not Republican, but boy, I swear to God, I just seem a way bit more conservative than I do liberal. I don't know what it is, Shot. Now, I ain't saying I'm aligning myself with Hogan on that. Mr. It wasn't terrific. His name will be Mr. Not That Terrific for the rest of the time that I have to speak about him, that he can say all of the things, egregious language that he used to talk about everything to do with Baltimore. The minute that Ocean City footage aired, it wasn't terrific.
No, he a microaggressive man with Tampa. Like that.
He's a clown. And y'all know me, I'ma just call a spade a spade. He is so hardcore returned to his Republican roots, where he seemed like he was, he was anti-Trump. Y'all thought that meant he was on our side. Absolutely not.
Nah.
Absolutely not, Mr. Not That Terrific. But anyway, we're not even talking about that, because we're going to talk about some of that with Senator Carter tonight. But we are talking about this. Listen, don't be deceived. It's plenty of work out here.
It's work.
Goodness, man.
It's work out here. And it's okay, Marv. We're going to prove it to him tonight a little bit. We're going to show him a little bit.
We're going to give him. So let's get to it, man. Let's get to it, because y'all know we always got the church announcements. Pastor Marvin got the church announcements for you tonight. Our very first segment is to make sure we give you the church announcements. Y'all know what it is. We all we got. We all we need. The We Are Us Brothers will be out this Saturday engaging. We're starting at 600 North Patterson Avenue at Tench Tillman Elementary School, and we are going to walk that community and make sure that we engage everybody in that community that's looking for any type of resources. We bring it to them right where they are. So if you are a black man, we need you to not meet us there, but to beat us there. We will be gathering at 12 noon on Saturday, July 10th, 2021, Tench Tillman Elementary School, 600 North Patterson Avenue. Be there if you are a person of any race or color. We do allow women to come out on Saturdays with us because it's daylight and it's not dangerous. So come on out. This is one of those opportunities. Incredible opportunity with a union job. A union job that me and my family in MOED advocated for and got the playing field leveled. I can't begin to tell you how many times I've had communication with people that have tried to get into apprenticeships and these unions and have not been able to get in. And Senator Coy McCray gave a call to our director. Our director said, I know who to put on it. He said, Marvin and Darrell, go handle that. We got there and handled it. And you can look at that flyer and see pay increases every 6 months. You start around $14.80 an hour and you're going to wind up at $23 an hour. And it'll be more than 23 because this doesn't include that regular cost of living increases. If you want a career, I need you to follow the instructions on this flyer. This flyer is in my story right now. It's on my page right now. Send that email. Let us get you connected. What we got next, Shop? All right. The University of Maryland, powered by my brother, Pastor Michael Franklin, is doing a thing, as they saying now. Hiring an event, and they bringing it right to the community, the Penn North Community Center. They're looking for floor techs. They're looking for room attendants. They're looking for waste attendants. These jobs do not require high school diplomas, and they're willing to work with people with backgrounds. Friday, July 16th from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. You might be surprised to see the brown-eyed bandit himself, Mr. Marvin McKenstry, in the building. I got to listen. I had to do this in this segment of announcements. We throw the term father around in the church so much that it gets on my nerves. But this is a true apostolic father. Y'all out here calling people y'all father that's 3 years older than you. Get out of here, man. I know we got some fatherhood complexes and some issues that been in the black community, gave us father issues. But this is a true apostolic father, a great man of God in Baltimore and abroad. And he's been a mentor and a good dear friend to me. So we want to say happy birthday to Bishop James D. Nelson Sr. Man, it looks like he's just getting stronger and stronger. All right. Here we go again. We are doing a thing, man. I don't know. I just like that little term. We doing a thing. The Lexington Terrace community. We met with the Poe Homes Community Association. We met with the Poppleton Place Community Association. And we are putting together Lexington Terrace. You see, COMM Unity, the give back. I've been doing it pretty much by myself with my church for the last couple of years, but we bringing it all together. And my man, I'm going to get him on this show, Dion Hollywood Jones. We coming together, me and Dion, to work with the community, to help the community empower itself, but to bring resources back to school and all of that. All right, Shaka is rushing me because I must be taking too much time on these segments, but we got Black history in the making, and this young man, I don't care what you got to say or what you think about his issues, he is a world champion in 3 weight divisions already, making Baltimore proud. He is like 100% of the people in the world imperfect, but he is a world champion because he's ascended to the top of his craft. We talking Black history in the making, the one and only Javante Tank Davis. Just recently captured the World Junior Welterweight Championship, 130 pounds, 135 pounds, now 140 pounds. The brother's doing it at every level, and we want to give him the Chop Shop salute and tell him great work and continue to stand and represent what youth in Baltimore can be, because somebody is watching and being blessed. All right. We usually start with this, but tonight we're going to finish it up with this. I like the thinking on that one, Shaka. All right. Stop the beef, y'all. We have done some amazing work of intervening. And listen, I got to send a shout out to my man, Benny. Benny, one of the brothers that had dedicated his time, energy, effort, and essentially his life as a part of the Safe Streets program, was murdered. Y'all know he was murdered, and they gave him a balloon release. You know, all the stuff they do now when tragedy happens. But I wanted to make sure that we took a moment to just talk about him while we talking about this Stop the Beef, because he was a true violence interrupter. And that's what we're doing. We're going to the source of the problem, putting our lives on the line to make sure that we can bring a reasonable end to any type of situation that might be going on in our communities. Call either of those numbers, 443-431-3705 and 443-522-7848. And somebody answers those phones every time you call. Men, come. So if you know somebody that's in a bad situation, You know somebody that needs money getting away from Baltimore to pay off a debt, call us. The We Are Us men do that because we all we got. And we understand we all we need. With all that being said, y'all, we're about 10 minutes in, and y'all know what that means. It's about that time for us to say, no, it was the song Run DMC Jam Master Jay, but it's time to bring the real Jam Master Jay, Jill Carter. I call her my champion, my shero, my warrior woman, because I've learned so much from her down through the years. She was one of the people, even when I found myself in national news, that had nothing but words of encouragement and told me to stay in the fight, never shunned me. And anytime I call her, she comes on this show. So I love her, right? I still don't know how y'all voted for Queasy. I ain't seen that dude, man. Shaka, you should have still been on the screen for that, because you know we always got to get it in. But since we already 11 minutes and 27 seconds in, I want to bring to the screen the one and only Baltimore's champion fighter, warrior woman who have seen the fruit of her labor after years of advocating for police reform. We're talking about the one and only Senator Jill Carter. Senator Carter, thank you for accepting our invitation here on the Chop Shop.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, your show has really grown and become amazing. I was so impressed by the opening and all of the things that you're doing, the jobs, the Stop the Violence. I have a few beefs that I could bring to you to squash.
I'm not surprised. Well, we talked about one of them earlier, but we ain't gonna talk about it on air. we trying to bring the unity and the harmony to our people as much as possible. So look, y'all, I need y'all to like, love, and share, even tag the names of people that should be on this broadcast, because we are here tonight and we are going to listen, this conversation is going to be open. I invited her to talk about one thing, but she said, look, we're going to have the whole conversation tonight. And that's why I love it, and I love bringing you on. But I wanted to start with these reforms that we saw. You, again, were one of the many people, but kind of you out front, from my perspective anyway, because I've had the chance to work closely with you, have been fighting and fighting and fighting. And we see now the fruit of that continuous effort and labor, and seeing these are historic changes in legislation as it pertains to police reform throughout the state of Maryland. Tell us what that really means.
Thank you again. So first, let me say, when we talk about the reforms, because you talked about Hogan and you talked about unemployment, so let me just put up here in the front that you know that before we even left session, Governor Hogan vetoed these bills and we had to override them before we even left. And I say that to say that for all of the people who thought, oh, you know, he's not really that bad, I like to have a beer with him, I kind of like him, we could have been jealous. Then we could spend time moving forward and not having to veto and override vetoes every year, which is what we've had to do. And let's be clear, what he has done when it comes to all of these issues has always been on the wrong side of the issues and the wrong side of history. And he may have said, I'm not Trump, but y'all do remember he did vote for Ronald Reagan. What does that tell you? That's crazy. But at any rate, we finally this year, what I would call police reform, and let's just say it what it is. Issues that pertained largely to Black people and issues of justice and the humanity of Black people moved from being a fringe issue for Maryland Democrats to a mainstream political issue for Maryland Democrats. And even though we had a terrible history right here in Maryland, ACLU reports more than 500 people, Marylanders, killed by police over since this century in Maryland. It took George Floyd and that video to wake Maryland politicians up. And largely, though, you know, we don't just wake up on our own. As a whole, we wake up because people decide it's an issue. So polling was done across Maryland, and so across racial lines and economic lines and jurisdictional lines, overwhelmingly Marylanders said, we want police reform, we want accountability. And our white allies said, and this brought so much joy to my heart when I was downtown last summer and I was seeing white people walking around with signs saying, stop killing Black people. Finally, this wasn't our issue, just us fighting. It wasn't just Tawanda Jones and West Coalition or, you know, another group or Anthony Anderson's family or protesting on Freddie Gray. Finally, it was deemed an issue that is global and affecting Black people, and where we allowed for so long police to disrespect and brutalize Black people individually and collectively.
When we see those kinds of reforms, for the sake of folks like myself who may be a bit of a novice, how does the rollout, specifically of a repeal to Leober, how does that and all of that stuff go into play? Like, what's the timeline? I know we're in a new fiscal year. What are the timelines to actually see these things to where they're enforceable regulations and laws?
So there's different effective dates for all of the different legislation. And so I don't think you're going to see the full implementation. Sadly, it's till 2025. But it's going to be a little bit increments over time. Like one of the bills that's important to me, what we call Anton's Law, which allows for the public disclosure of police disciplinary records, that will come into effect this year in October. But then the one that's the furthest out, which you call the repeal of Leober, and I have to come to a place where I can agree that it's repeal of Leober, because it was a repeal of the old 1974 Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights. But I will say that, in all honesty, there are things that could have been done better in the replacement of it. And if we talk at all about Ocean City, I'll talk about that. One of those things is, even with the repeal of Leober and the change of the disciplinary process, the administrative disciplinary process, even though this new law will have civilians on the complete charging board within police departments made up of appointed civilians, and even though it allows for police over accountability boards similar to like civilian review boards in every jurisdiction, and even though it puts a majority of civilians on trial boards, when trial boards occur when police say, nope, I'm not accepting the charges, I want a whole hearing. Even though it does those really good things, it still doesn't say when you see something like what happened in Ocean City, there should be an automatic leave without pay. It still doesn't do that. And those are some of the kinds of things I know people want to see. It also still doesn't, and Marvin, I know you get this, it still doesn't fully empower the civilian oversight entity to have all of the control over the discipline. Still doesn't do that. But why could I embrace it? Because it's a step. It's a major step. It's a major step to go from where we were to say, you know what? We're going to have civilians decide to charge, when to charge, what to charge, and whether to charge. That's a big step. To say majority civilian trial board, big step. To
Huge.
Say civilian, even though we know the CRB doesn't have power, but to even say that has to exist in every jurisdiction, and knowing that we can bring it more authority over time, it's a step. All of these things are steps on that. So that was, I would say, can I be honest with you? That's
absolutely.
It's a major piece of legislation. But what is really exciting is Anton's Law, where we now will get to see police disciplinary records.
I think that puts us so far in front of some of the other things that does not happen until much later, because it's kind of, do you want to associate yourself with this officer when we can see that he's had a ton of these incidents? Are you going to want to stand there? I don't mind you slipping up beside him, whispering in his ear, say, look, you need to resign. Because I think when I heard about that part, and that part being the first part of the rollout, it made me feel like, oh man, they might have slipped up and actually gave us something with some real teeth. Because, especially not BPD or the political entities in Baltimore going to stand beside an officer once that information becomes public.
So let me tell you, though, what I noticed, and you heard me say publicly, is that even though these are great steps, the Ocean City situation highlights how they're not coming fast enough, right? Because we also passed a statewide universal use of force law, and the use of force law, a situation like Ocean City, we wouldn't have to rely on prosecutors to charge assault. This would be a violation of the use of force law. All of those officers standing around that did not intervene, they would also potentially be charged under the new use of force law, and then and they could all be criminalized, criminal charges, and sentenced to as much as 10 years. So we know that prosecutors, even though there are changes being made everywhere, prosecutors, judges, and juries still have a history of being reluctant to charge, prosecute, convict, and sentence officers. But the new use of force law is just another tool to kind of take some of the pressure off of them. You don't have to find assault or attempted murder. You can just find violation of use of force.
I want to go ahead and get this question while we got it up there from one of our viewers. He says, how can the state legislature expedite the implementation of police reform laws without a special session? I guess what he's saying is there's something that the people can do. Is there some way that it can be provoked, maybe from community, or how would something like that happen?
So I doubt that we're going to have a special session to deal with it. I think it could be dealt with in the regular session. I mean, of course, we're going to miss the fall, but we could deal with it in regular session. Now, we are going to have a special session, but usually those special sessions, the subject matter is already predetermined, and it is now. It's very difficult. We got to get complete agreement from both sides to be able to agree to add something to it. So we are going to have a special session, likely in early December, on redistricting, on the congressional districts. And that's the only early session we're going to have. Other than that, we just have to wait until January. But frankly, when you're talking about implementation in 2022, 2023, 2024, and 25, there's a lot of room to move some of these dates up.
One of the things that we've never done before, or I haven't done successfully, is had people get involved enough now up into the next session to be able to have the show of force necessary. What would your advice be to our viewing audience for people like our brother who submitted that question? How should they, as a community, start positioning themselves or maybe organizing in their own communities to try and make sure that they can be an organized voice to support champions like yourself who are going to be looking for early implementation and other things that affect this law?
First things first, always know who your specific legislators are and email them with what you want to have them do. If you want to have them move these dates up, say, hey, we need these police reform laws to be implemented sooner. Also connect with those organizations that you've even featured that we know are at the forefront of legislative advocacy on this, like LBS, like ACLU, and a number of other groups. You know, they had a whole collective last session in unison, and it was very powerful. You know, let's be clear. A lot of things came into play to make the legislature move the way it did. Those groups coming together as one, religious groups, community advocacy groups, justice groups. It was just very powerful.
That's one of the things I've always loved about you as a leader in and around Baltimore City. You have always, there was no group to be ignored by you. I've seen you in your responsiveness to communities. I've seen you in your responsiveness to faith leaders and things of that nature. You just said a really, really powerful thing, because I think some people leave their power out back somewhere because they don't really realize how key it is or important it is to begin to organize in those spaces that are already collectives, but are just not focused on those kinds of things. Can you talk to the pastors, talk to the community association leaders and those folks about how important it is to know those leaders, know who their leaders are, and begin to make those kinds of things a part of what they're already coordinating in their efforts to see change?
It's critically important. It's always been my biggest frustration in the whole world, really. My biggest frustration in the world is that this disconnect between what we do legislatively and then we come out and we come to like these community association meetings, for example, and their agendas are to uplift their community, but they're talking about speed bumps and noise and crime and trash, largely things that are city issues, but they don't often stay engaged, or they're so busy dealing with the day-to-day crises and problems, they don't really have the bandwidth to be engaged in what we do. But the good news is this: with everything being virtual this last session, and the fact that it's still going to be virtual, and the way people are now getting more accustomed to signing on to the computer, like they're watching this and they're doing other Zoom meetings, it should become almost like rote now, like second nature, to just plug in and look at what we're doing, plug into our hearings and our voting sessions. Trust me, people have been shocked by what they see at our voting sessions. That's been really the thing, even more so than the hearings.
Awesome. So we're going to make that shift now and talk about Ocean City. And the way that I want to segue to the conversation is to say, when I seen Jay, my guy, Jay Wendell Gordon, and y'all will be seeing him in the upcoming weeks on. He's been a friend to the show, always gives us a yes when we reach out. When I seen Jay sign on to represent the young men, I was first of all excited because Jay has made it his passion to make sure that our people are not treated any kind of way. But I wasn't surprised. I gotta honestly say, when I saw that you got with the squad, it surprised me, not because I wouldn't think that you wouldn't want to be at the front of that, but I just haven't seen you move in that way. But when I saw it, I said, oh my goodness. Like, where was your first of all, what was your heart when 5 years after Freddie Gray, you see George Floyd, and then right on the heels of George Floyd, you see this right here in the state of Maryland? Where was your heart when you saw what took place with those young men?
My heart went back to my roots because I remember stories that my mother told of my father going down to desegregate Ocean City and putting my older sister in hotels and swimming pools to prove that, to force the issue that Black people could be allowed. And then, growing up here, if any of us in this area have ever been to Ocean City, we know that there's been a spirit there of you're not welcome, that we don't want you here. So as soon as I saw the video, it was very clear to me, y'all young people, y'all don't know. You don't realize, you don't really know the history. They don't want you there. And let me say that, once I started speaking about it, even before I took on one of the cases, I got a lot of emails from people saying, hey, let me tell you what happened to me in Ocean City. And the stories are all the same. So I'm Black, I'm white, I'm with my Black husband, and we both go get a beer on the Ocean City boardwalk, and then the police come and snatch him down and push him to the ground, arrest him, brutalize him, or whatever. Or it's like a whole bunch of white people and one Black person in the group, and the police will go and target them. I've got a number of emails on these kinds of scenarios that happen. So anyway, I'm not at all surprised, frankly, about Ocean City's mentality. But what really kind of infuriated me was the arrogance and the defiance of these officers that are well aware that even though these dates, effective dates of these laws are not all in play, they know they're coming. And they're saying, we're not even going to consider governing ourselves in accordance with what the Maryland legislature says we have to do. We are going to continue, and we not only we continue business as usual, we're going to show off. We're going to go, buck wild. Complete defiance, complete dehumanization of these young men. And let me just say, the two young men that I met, teenagers that I met, they're some of the nicest, kindest, sweetest, most well-mannered young people that you would meet. They are not belligerent. They are not threatening in any way, and they weren't threatening in the situations that they found themselves in Ocean City either.
That's an interesting take on it, because when you think about it, I think that people have a tendency to try and play judge, jury, and executioner from a clip of video, no matter which side you stand on it, if you pro police or if you pro the young men. But one of the things that's always kind of stuck out to me is that's how I felt when I seen the George Floyd situation happen. Like, how is this happening 5 years after Freddie Gray? It may be a little different to see Freddie Gray happen 25 years after Rodney King, but that's kind of what it was for me when I saw that. But that mentality and that arrogance that you talk about, to me, it seems supported when you have a politician come on and instead of completely and outright condemning the activity in the space that we're in, he says it was not terrific. Can you talk to us about that?
Oh, not only did the governor say it wasn't terrific, that's better than what the mayor of Ocean City and the senator that represents the area said. They came out and said, well, anybody that thinks that the police did anything wrong, they just didn't understand the whole situation and that these young people were threatening them. Yet, so outside of even the fact that I represent one of the people, even in the case or outside of the case, no one as yet has produced this compelling evidence, video footage that allegedly that they've seen that show that somehow either of these young people was being threatening. I don't believe it. I think they're lying. I think that the police are lying. Okay, their responses on Twitter and their statements, I think they were dishonest. But number two, I believe that the elected officials that jumped into their defense, it was a knee-jerk reaction, just wanting to be protective of police and show their loyalty and allegiance to police, and really wanting to say, look, we don't need these problems right now. We about to make a lot of money down here this summer in Ocean City. We do not need any problems. We don't want the NAACP coming out here talking about boycott. We need to keep our money here. So let's just downplay this and move on. I think that was the motivation. And, I don't know what's going to happen, but if they aren't seriously having meetings and making decisions to not continue along that line, I mean, there's likely to be other instances this summer.
Other instances of police engagements that look like that?
I think so, because if they are continuing to keep this narrative, this, defensive, we were all right, we didn't do anything wrong, we have a right to use force, is what they said.
Yeah, I remember that. I couldn't believe that when I heard it.
They're completely wrong on that. So if that's the way they want to play it, I just don't think it bodes very well for us in Ocean City in the short term.
I think that, for me, I've kind of been a little different in spaces like that, because if somebody was to say that if I had a trip booked and paid for to Ocean City, I wasn't going. It's no way, and I'm talking about from the perspective of, it's no way that I'm going to see a young man that looks like one of my sons being kneed in his side aggressively by a police officer and hear the nonsense that they said, and then go and spend my money there and help to pay whatever taxes that pays that officer. I think, what is talk to us about the economic implications, the power of the black dollar, and how essential it is that we don't wait for somebody to call for a boycott, but we just make a personal decision that you can't have my damn money when you treat black people like this.
Well, let's hope that we will. And I want to also say that I have gotten a lot of messages from black people who say, even before seeing this, I don't go to Ocean City. There's a lot of black people that say, I don't go to Ocean City. But let us be clear. It's one thing to make a decision, I'm not going to Ocean City. But if you're a young person and all of your friends, all of your schoolmates are going down there and you want to go and hang out, you have fun and enjoy yourself too, you ought to be able to do it without being brutalized, illegally arrested, and illegally beaten by police. And it's traumatic for these people, because not only did it happen, the whole world saw it. These aren't people that grew up believing that this is something that would happen to them. I can speak for one of them, was in fear for his life, and that's serious. To think that, because what you've seen now, a myriad of these scenarios play out on video over the last years, and you think you could be the next one. It's very scary, very traumatic.
The Democratic primary winner in the New York City mayor's race, Eric Adams, I got the chance to hear some of the things that he said after his win. And one of the things that really stuck out to me is when they asked him about how he felt as though with the current culture or the anti-police movement. I was listening to some conservative radio when they were talking about it. So it was kind of framed as the anti-police movement. If it impacts officers that are part of the New York Police Department, and it brings them to a place to where it impacts the effectiveness of how they want to do their job. And his response was, as the new incoming mayor, because he's the Democratic candidate, he's going to win the mayor's seat, was, if you can't do an effective job of policing and protecting our people, get off my damn streets. How critical is it that people in local politics, as we see these changes go, send a message to police that you just can't take time off, which many people is believing was happening. We saw it after Freddie Gray. Some people believe that it's continued in some. How important is it that local leadership step up and say, no, this isn't acceptable and you can't do this?
Well, it's critically important. Frankly, I give him the credit because, we have as politicians who are damn near afraid of the police, afraid of the police unions. They don't want to ruffle the feathers, and they appease them way too much. But let's also say this: the face you saw is because I liked Maya Wiley, but maybe next time. But this guy is probably not all bad. But basically, I feel like even here in Baltimore, where we've heard repeatedly by people who say, the police are doing a slowdown because they're afraid to get charged, like the officers in Freddie Gray, or many of my colleagues that have repeatedly said, well, we can't make them accountable or disclose their records because we're going to it's going to have a chilling effect on people wanting to be cops. The mayor of New York is right, but what I say that I would hope all of the leaders here would say is this: if you can't police without brutalizing people, then you need to not be in policing.
Oh my goodness. To me, that has to become central in the conversation. The idea that brutality, because we're not talking about use of force, we're talking outright brutality, what you characterize as dehumanization. If that has to be a part of what you believe it takes to be effective in policing, you just need a new career. Like, how do we impact that mind frame in the culture? Like, what at every level? I'm talking community, in police departments, in politics. Because to me, that's where the problem actually lies.
It does, and let's be clear. Can I throw something else in here, Marvin?
Absolutely, it's your show.
One of the things that we need to be cognizant of is, even with the alleged slowdown, even with the reduction in number of arrests since the consent decree, I can tell you from personal firsthand experience as a lawyer, there isn't a slowdown on unconstitutional acts. Every time, I can't say how often, but, frequently, I'm contacted by potential clients and their stories are the same. And this because it was in the consent decree. It was in the DOJ report. The scenario about a black man in Baltimore can't have a backpack, right, without being searched. So every time there's a young person with a backpack, the police claim, I saw him doing a security check, which means, he was grasping it because he had weight. He was checking, making sure his gun was in place. And then, they go up, they jack him up, they search the thing illegally with no probable cause. I can honestly tell you that I get a myriad of calls about this on a regular basis. It is still happening all the time. And I say this to say that whatever is supposed to be happening, it is not really fundamentally changing the day-to-day interaction.
So you brought it up, and we're going to talk about it because we know that there's a $1.5 million being paid to a monitor and a consent decree that God knows how much money has been spent on technology and other things towards implementation. One of the advocates he was pro consent decree and even had a space working in the consent decree. We're going to have him on the show in a couple of weeks. Literally said his grade for the consent decree was a C- because it's moving slow and you're not seeing it affect or impact change the way that you was hoping, or we would hope that it would. How would you grade how could the consent decree is impacting Baltimore thus far?
It's not having a major impact on Baltimore. Most of the people that live here don't have any tangible evidence on a regular basis that it's even in place. They're still living, many of my constituents and people across the city, living very much in fear, feeling that there's no one kind of in control of what's going on in the streets. The violence is rampant. We have a lot of programs, like some successful Safe Streets programs, but people are still, for the most part, feeling like whatever we're doing is not working. The problem still exists that we don't have police doing a lot to prevent anything because they still don't know the people. I don't believe the consent decree has changed the relationship between people and police for the most part. I'm not talking about one or two exceptions or individual circumstances, but a lot of the issue is that the police still don't know the people. They still don't come from the city. They don't love the city. They're not comfortable in the communities, and they don't know. They don't know your son who's going to his music class with his backpack from the other one who's walking out there, who is carrying the weight, whose backpack is stacked with drugs and a gun. They don't bother to discern. They don't try to discern. And I don't think they're capable of maybe discerning because they don't know the people or have that interest in. There's nothing that's been in the consent decree that's forced that to change in any way.
Every once in a while during the winter months, my grandmother would take everything that was in the refrigerator that she might have cooked through the week, and she would just put it all in one pot. It wouldn't matter if it was macaroni and cheese, and she would probably throw it in there with a roast. So you would have just about every vegetable, some noodle sauce, some meat. I'm bringing it up to say, when you look at the fact that we have a consent decree, we have repeals or some form of a repeal in Leopold, we have new legislation rolling out. In the long term, what impact do you see that big pot of soup having towards bringing any level of real police reform? And I'm asking because I consider you an expert in the matter.
Well, thank you. So, I think that we know this, and I was really, really bad at geometry and most math, right? But when your premise is wrong, your conclusion is wrong. And I believe we started off wrong with the whole consent decree. And I'm not just saying this like all after the fact. I had problems that I vocalized about it at the time. And we saw evidence very early that it wasn't right. We did. We saw Harlem Park happen in a consent decree. We saw when I was with the Civilian Review Board, the police say, we're not going to send them any files, and the city condoning it, and the monitoring team saying nothing and doing nothing. So we knew that it wasn't right. But I think that we have fatigue. I think there's been some activism fatigue, but there's also been some belief that, not just fatigue, but what more can we really have? I mean, we've got federal oversight. What more can we get? I think people are kind of like, I don't know what more we can get. And then they feel excited because they got a new young mayor that is, more inclined to be for police reform than some of the prior ones. But perhaps it's just too far gone. I don't know. I think a couple of things need to happen. I think we need to come together and reevaluate where this consent decree and monitoring team are going, and maybe put some new, deadlines or something in place to demand some results and better interaction, better communication, because we're really not getting it. I think we also need to hold the commissioner more accountable as not just a commissioner that is making sure the consent decree is implemented, but making sure that he is pushing this department and making the reforms and leading and guiding strong officers, right? I don't know that, this. I was just on a walk with the mayor and the police commissioner and a whole bunch of people. And I am not going to say anything negative because I know their hearts are in the right place. But even then, I just saw so much wrong. So much wrong. Like, these are the people that are capable of controlling what is happening in our streets right now, right? We don't need to go around asking for change. This is who can make those changes.
So let me ask you this question, right? Because we've heard the mayor, after his meeting with the governor, talk about bringing together this group of people and re-implementing this pact towards trying to bring about criminal justice reform, or not criminal justice reform, but change in what's happening in crime in Baltimore. Seeing as how you have a history of doing this great work, and we know that police reform is a huge part of what's going to make a difference, have you been asked to be a part of that body?
No, of course not.
That's one of those cases where I was hoping that you would go surprise me this time.
No, I'm
gonna let you talk.
I feel like I'm still very much treated as a fringe. I'm not sure if it's because of this. I don't know, but I don't feel like I'm really included in much. I really haven't found my footing back, kind of like with the city, since I was ousted from my job with civil rights. I'd love to see that office do more. I would love it. What I'm saying though is we just walked down Edmondson Avenue, which is a disaster. It's my district, and I'm here to say, sadly, it's a disaster. It's not something that's within my control that's making it a disaster, but you've got sewage stuff happening. You've got trash everywhere. You've got so many dilapidated abandoned houses, and I just was feeling like this is just not acceptable. And if I feel this way, imagine how the people who live there every day in that and feel like nothing, no matter how long they live there, no matter how long they resist any desire to move out of their home or leave this place, how much they pay in taxes, how much we ask them to vote all the time, and they do, how they feel. I cannot honestly say, I can't even understand how some of these older adults in particular that have endured this for so long, I can't even understand how they stay, because they have not been treated well.
And this week marked the anniversary of the shooting that caused the death of Taylor Hayes. So when we talking about Edmondson Village, there's a Edmondson Village that people know now, but Edmondson Village is one of the historic neighborhoods in Baltimore. My great grandmother had a house in the 3900 block of Flowerton Road that my family still owns to this day. And there are many people in that area that are homeowners, as you say, as you just said. When we talk about it, because if I'm thinking again about the fact that you stepped up and said, I'm in the Senate, but I can do so much more in Congress. And we're going to, I'm going to talk about it. I got you on here now. I make a lot of jokes and I laugh a lot when it comes down to Kweisi Mfume, because we pretty much knew who Kweisi Mfume was and what he was. And yet, not only did he win, but the way that he was able to win over a person who has been on the front line, and every conversation that has mattered over the last 10 to 15 years in the city of Baltimore, and humbled yourself in some spaces to say, it ain't about me becoming mayor. It's about Baltimore being right. I can sit under somebody else's leadership, ousted from the CRB. And literally they didn't realize, well, they realized it, but the people didn't realize when they ousted you from that office, the CRB died. There's no CRB.
It still exists.
Well, there's no CRB. I don't even know. Have they filled it back up yet? Do they have 9 members again?
I don't know, but I mean, it exists.
Yeah, well, that's not what I mean. What I'm saying is, even though the operating statute and things of that nature didn't have a lot of teeth, when you had you there with as a person with some ability to have influence and power, it was a thing. It hasn't been a thing since you left. Talk to us about that. You run for Congress. To me, it should have been easy. I actually expected maybe Maya for name recognition and sentiment to her husband to maybe be, but Kweisi Mfume, and I haven't seen the brother. Haven't seen him, haven't heard from him, haven't anything. He sends everywhere that I am that he should be. He sends a representative. He never shows. I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? We going to move.
In some kind of way, he was able to elevate himself to like icon status. He's a Baltimore boy made good. He went on the world stage. He became the head of the NAACP. He was, a black congressman after the great Karen J. Mitchell. He had very good parties. And I will tell, in his defense, I've had some people say that, when he was there and they reached out to him for help with something, that he was helpful to them. So, I mean.
But I think that's what's hurting Baltimore. I think the fact that you have people who have some level of influence, that have some personal relationship with political figures here, that can advocate, doesn't look at the big picture, that overall, you might have that person on speed dial and can call them and you get a response and get what you need. But that's not what's helping our city and the district as a whole.
So I think that I learned a lot of lessons. And what I learned out of that is I don't feel so in many ways, and this, I haven't played the games. I haven't done the work to ingratiate myself in many ways with the typical, establishment folks. And also a lot of the work I've done for justice, a lot of people just don't know because I haven't been the greatest at self-promotion. But for many, many years, remember this, I was totally blackballed by local media. So many people, like so much, but you are an exception. Most people have no idea because the Baltimore Sun simply would not write my name. And dare I say, my paper, the Baltimore Afro, as well, had a lot of trouble putting my name in the paper in any kind of a positive light.
Wow. The power of media. Senator Jill P. Carter, we are grateful that you would come and sit down and talk with us tonight. I want to give you the opportunity to give us any closing remarks or final thoughts that you would have. Just talk to the people.
Well, thanks again. I'm impressed with your show. I'm very honored that you wanted to have me on as a guest. I hope that I didn't rant and ramble too much and that people got something out of it. You know, you started with the police reforms. This is really important. And I'm speaking to everybody when I say that even if you are not a person that's been impacted personally or your family by police brutality, please understand that until we change this thinking and this culture with policing, we're not going to have public safety. And we can't have public safety because families and entire communities that have been treated this way for decades, they simply can't have a relationship with police that have treated them that way. That all has to change as a root cause of some of the mayhem that we have in the streets, the corruption in the police department, the discrimination in the police department. And what I'm talking about is Black and women officers who have caught nothing but hell trying to work in the police department in Baltimore City. So please understand that this is an issue that's even bigger than just wanting to stop the brutality. It's really a core. It's at the core of bringing about greater public safety. We need to have more groups like yours getting in the streets, talking to young men, letting them know that somebody cares about them, letting them know that there are options. Let's be clear. And if I can rant for a second, because this came up for a little while ago. You know, we talk all the time and I defend, you know, young people messing up. Young people mess up. I was a disaster, okay? I just sent a message to somebody, a friend the other day and said, you know, the only reason I'm not a junkie, a drug dealer, or dead is because my mother would have killed me. So I get it. I'm clear. I was this lucky human being born to a mother that was great, that was able to guide me, able to put the fear of God into me so that I was more afraid of her than anything I could encounter in the streets, right? I was afraid to mess up. I believed that I could become a Supreme Court justice because Thurgood Marshall was one. That is what I believed as a child. And I had a mother who said, if you get a record, this is not going to happen. You will never go to the Supreme Court. You'll never do anything because a record is going to ruin your life. Now, we have, even in my generation, we didn't have all parents like that. But we have less and less. We have grandparents now that have grandparent fatigue. And even now, grandparents are young and didn't grow up with that. It's incumbent upon all of us to wrap our arms around our whole community and particularly be that village for our young people. We really got to understand that it's our job, all of our job. It's not the job of Brandon Scott or Jill Carter or the police. God knows it's not the job of the police. It's our job. It's our job. It's our responsibility to do it. And so the more organizations, the more, you know, scenarios like what you all are doing, which I really appreciate. And you know, I said, don't you let women come because I want to be a part of that. We got to go into the streets, though, not at 5 o'clock in the evening. We got to be in the streets at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. We have to get people where they are, okay? We are not going to reach anybody by not being there when things are going down. And that's just what I have to say about that. And the other thing is, when the Congress thing and the Kwesi and Fume thing, you know, people are really busy with their lives and they don't pay attention. Unfortunately, we don't know the good from the bad when it comes to politics. I feel like I've given a huge chunk of my life to this. I'm getting older. I'm not young anymore. And I'm tired. I'm really tired. And I want to leave a legacy of something. And what I want my legacy to be is that I got our people engaged to understand they can control the politics of our community. They don't have to beg their people, their elected officials for something. They can control them, right? You shouldn't have to vote and then beg, can you please get my bulk trash? Nah, they ought to know that to happen. We don't have a choice but to pick up that bulk trash, right? And we have the power to do it. We've just accepted so little for so long. We've forgotten that we have the power. That's it.
Your legacy is already so great, and you have incorporated this monumental changes in legislation, and we know that we expecting and we praying with you for great victories in this Ocean City matter. What's next for Senator Joe Carter? What is that next thing you're going to focus on?
So I want to focus on, because I think that a big thing for next session, like we knew police reform was going to be this session, is going to be the legalization of recreational marijuana. And whatever you feel about that, I need you to understand it's going to happen, not just in Maryland, but the whole country. It's next up for profits for the state. It's going to happen. And so the critical part is to make sure that our people benefit, that our people that have been harmed by the illegal drug trade are now given opportunities in the legal drug trade, because it's a chance to have economic.
Ooh.
And I think that's important. And I will be at the forefront of that, ensuring that there is equity. I want everybody's record cleared. I want my people freed. I want the records cleared. And I want them to get licenses to legally grow and sell marijuana, so you don't have to do it in the streets and risk, your life. And so that's important. And then I also think, again, what's the most important thing? The children are our future. We got to get the juvenile system together. We got to get juvenile reform. Our children are still mistreated in the criminal justice system. We gotta take them, reach them, get them. Children are not. I'm gonna say something controversial.
Come on.
Children are not criminals. They are not animals, and they are not monsters. They are children. Children don't do anything that adults have not shown them. Okay, and so we need to get it together. But we need to start understanding that we have to embrace our children and love them and care for them and put them in the right programs and the right surroundings. But to say that a child should be automatically charged as an adult and put into an adult prison and life completely destroyed, that's always wrong. Always the wrong answer.
I'm literally working with a young lady who's a dear friend of mine whose son is in that situation. My son has been in that situation, and I personally was in that very same situation. Again, thank you, Senator Joe Carter. Shaka, I started smiling when she started talking about it, because we have got to book that show. We have got to have the conversation, because I joke a lot about me being conservative, but there's some of y'all who just really don't get it and really do not understand that the same alcohol, wine, and stuff that you endorse at one time was just like looked at, frowned upon, like the drug, like the marijuana that we're talking about legalizing. And I'm talking about a lot of my friends who are in the church, who are in ministry. We have got to have these conversations so that we understand that this transition is happening, and how to make it a palatable transitions for our community from every position. Senator Joe Carter, we thank you for being with us tonight. I'm always excited when you come, and when I'm ready to have that conversation, we are definitely going to invite you back. You got a pass, an open door. You can call me and say, hey, I need to come on there and talk to the people, and we're going to make sure that you get on and talk to the people.
We got one of my icons.
I see Shirley Chisholm. Yeah, that's a nice shirt. All right, y'all, we got 2 shows I want to talk about. First thing I got to tell you is next week, don't look for us. I don't know. We might do a rerun, because we got this great show with Senator Joe Carter. We got a show that we did a couple of weeks ago that I really loved with Mayor Sheila Dixon. We might do a rerun. But next week, we won't be on live. Shaka is going to Colorado. We hit that goal. Shaka, can you come on back on the screen? We hit that goal of being able to raise $10,000. Shout out to Black People Ride Bikes organization. They are taking Black children and their families. It was just we gonna take the kids. Now they're taking the kids and the families. Talk about it a little bit, Shop.
Yeah, so we're going to Winter Garden, Colorado for from the 10th to the 14th. So we're taking the youth out there for the USA Mountain Bike Championship. So we were able to get some sponsored spots. We just had to get the kids there, and we raised the money, and the community responded. Sadly, nary politician responded, but the community responded. But I'm sorry, nary politician that we reached out to. that's important to say. No one we reached out to, but the community itself responded. And yeah, it's dope, man. So we're gonna take them out there. There's gonna be colleges out there. It's gonna be a whole experience. There'll be college recruits looking to recruit kids for biking, and these are scholarships that our kids are not usually experienced. You know, they don't usually get to experience these type of scholarships or the awareness of it. So we're gonna take them to see another part of the country and open their eyes up a little bit, and hopefully they stay wide open, and you know.
And Colorado, listen, Colorado is one of those states where it is already legalized. All right,
been legal out there, and
yeah, been legal for a while.
Thanks for the fewer of us. Legalize it sooner, just so you know.
Hold on. So let me say this on just to piggyback what Senator Carter was saying earlier. My man was out here living West Side, doing his thing, and had 2 weed charges. Did like 8 years. Moved to Colorado. He is now put both his kids through school, you know, has a house, and is living well what he was over here, what he got charged for over here and went to jail for over here. And it's just like, come on, y'all. Like,
that's the conversation that we gotta have. There is a transitional space and a transitional proposition that we have to understand before we go and we could make some crash judgment on that topic. But we're gonna talk about it. I gotta get off there. Bay sitting right there. When I say right there, I mean literally on the other side of my computer, like, okay, it's been an hour. I need your attention now. So I want to talk really quick. We are off next week on July 15th. We won't be here, but we're coming right back on July 22nd, and we're going to talk to this strong brother who, man, he ran for the 5th District Senate seat, and he didn't win, but he's one of those that continued, not Senate, 5th District Council seat. I see Jill Carter facial expressions will help you understand you out of order. The 5th District City Council seat, and he did not win, but he's been one of those persons that has been a voice that has not made it about if I get elected or not. He trained so many black men to receive their CDL driver's license and does so many other things activism-wise to make sure that our city is better. And he's going to come and sit down and listen. This is going to be a rich conversation because this brother takes no tea for the fever, and he going to say what he need to say, and he calls names. He'll be with us next week, and then the following week, we're going to continue this consent decree conversation. I'm bringing on my friend and my brother, Mr. Ray Kelly. I'm looking at Jill's face. Okay. She practiced that time. I'm bringing on my friend and my brother, Mr. Ray Kelly, and we're going to sit down and talk all things Baltimore with a heavy dose of police reform as it pertains to the consent decree. I want to thank Senator Jill Carter again. I want to thank the greatest producer in the land, my right hand and my left hand, my main man, Mr. Shaka Pitts. And mostly I want to thank our audience tonight, because I always say if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's around to hear it, does it make a sound? Of course it does. There was just nobody there to hear it, but you guys show up week after week after week. And now you can go to our YouTube channel and you can go get the replay. You can share and send it to your friends. Please do that. And even when we in the impromptu move to 7 p.m. came on later, you guys still showed up to hear what our warrior woman, our super shero, had to come on and say to us tonight. So I want to thank our audience tonight. My brother George Button was on tonight. As always, Carol Wilson, Danielle Scott, so many of you who are regulars that come and check in with us and make sure that the Chop Shop is a success. Continue to love Baltimore. Continue to be active. Continue to pursue peace until you find it. With that being said, Shop, take me home.
I can be more. There's nothing that I can't achieve if I just believe. You can be more. You can make every dream a reality. We can be more. Be more, be more.
Yeah.
I can be more.
I wake up every day and try to be more. I pray I be more. It's easy to achieve anything you believe. Like hold your head high. Girl, you got a reason to breathe. I see a rare mind. Boy, you got a reason to dream. Let's take flight. Give the children a reason to see redemption. We grow up in the jacks where it's evil and wicked. Where the people with success don't want to send you a visit. But we still finna make this life worth living. Now throw your hands to the sky if you feel it.
Hey, throw your hands to the sky if you the realest. You got a vision, let's put them pistols away and make sure the OGs keep the community safe. In the world where the ladies crying, the babies dying, I think we can create that space to make a way for the ladies to ride and make baby giants. Be more, believe, let's play. I'm so in love with life. Little